Hello, my dear students. It's Dr.Yogesh Kumar Tiwari, presently working at Government Ma Mahamaya College, Khargone District, Korea, Chhattisgarh. It's a matter of great pleasure for me that I have been assigned to discuss about or to make my lecture videos on one of the most famous novels entitled The Scarlet Letter, written by Nathaniel Hawthorne. So in this particular lecture, I would like to tell you that we are moving faster and just trying to catch the glimpses of both the writer and what he produced before all of us. This particular novel was published in 1850, though it was having the 17th century background. Okay, so we shall be taking this discussion just as an extract or an overview. Okay. In the next lecture, we shall be discussing in detail. So just keep your ears open. So Nathaniel Hawthorne, it is very important just to discuss about some biographical details, backgrounds. So it was written, this particular novel was written by Nathaniel Hawthorne. He was an American novelist. He was born in 1804 in the city of Salem, that is Massachusetts. And one thing I would like to point out here that his family members or his parents didn't have W in their surnames. It may be one of the typical reasons. So the name of his father was Nathaniel Hawthorne Sr. and the former Elizabeth Clark Manning. Mother's name. He was a descendant of a long line of Puritan ancestors. So in order to distance himself, he just wanted to keep himself aloof from the typical kind of involvement that might have taken place once upon a time. He added W in his surname. Okay? Clear? So he wanted to distance himself from family's shameful involvement. Shameful. It was very shameful involvement in Salem witch trials. So he added W to his last name. That is the name. Okay. After his father, his father was a ship captain, died of yellow fever at sea when Nathaniel was only 4. His mother became very attentive, very protective, and pushed him towards relatively isolated pursuits. Okay, so he was forced to live his life from the very beginning in isolated places. So Hawthorne's childhood left him overly shy. He was very much shy. He did not share his ideas. Okay, and plenty of time was spent reading books. He was bookish. Okay, which molded his life as a writer. So he turned to writing after his graduation from Bowdoin College. His first novel was Fanshawe. I am giving the spelling Fanshawe. It was an unsuccessful one. And Hawthorne himself disavowed the work as amateurish. You know, amateurish work? That is lacking some very skilled inclusions. However, Hawthorne returned to Salem where he struggled as a short story writer for 12 years. So for 12 long years, he continued writing short stories. So he published Twice Told Tales in 1837. His insufficient earnings as a writer forced Hawthorne to enter a career as a Boston custom house measurer in 1839. In 1842, he married Sophia Peabody and moved to the manse in Concord. Hawthorne returned to Salem in 1845, then devoted himself to his most famous novel, The Scarlet Letter. The Scarlet Letter was an immediate success that allowed him to devote himself to his writing. So, as soon as He measured himself that the Scarlet later was being appreciated by the society, by the readers. He devoted himself to the further writing. He published The House of the Seven Gables in 1851. Hawthorne passed away on 19th of May 1864 in Plymouth, New Hampshire, after a long period of illness. He was suffering from dementia, during which he suffered several bouts of dementia. The story of the Scarlet Letter is set in 17th century Puritan Boston, and during the years 1642 and 1649. The Puritans had settled in New England to practice their religious beliefs after leaving the Old World, where they had been persecuted. The Puritans were a legalistic sect of Protestant Christians influenced by Calvinism. Their beliefs emphasized this fact that God was almighty. He was omnipotent. So they all the time emphasized the God's omnipotence and the concept of election. The idea that salvation is predestined. Religious behavior was seen as both a result of salvation and evidence of it. You can find plenty of evidences if you go through. Then background of the 17th century. The Puritan communities were centered on the idea of purity. Sometimes purity was maintained by all of them in extraordinary manner. Purity of thought, purity of deed. And sins were rooted out and punished harshly. Sinners were treated very harshly. I would say cruelly. So the physical setting of the Scarlet Letter, it's a romance, I would say, reflects the belief and habits of the Puritans. So this particular novel is packed with the habits and practices of Puritans and Puritan society and the member of Puritan societies. Throughout the book, we are taken on a mini tour of the most important town, buildings and structures, law and religions, the heart of the town. I mean, most of the people are very, very caring or taking interest in discussing about or the maintaining about the law, the enforcement of law, the enforcement of purity, and maintaining the existential clarity. So, I would like to throw light on the major themes of this particular novel. I have not disclosed the name yet, the characters of this particular novel. Slowly it will be put before all of you. So, the theme of this particular novel, entitled The Scarlet Letter, is sin. You know sin? Something which is to be punished and harshly punished if you are living in the age of Puritanism. So sin is clearly a matter of great importance in the mid-17th century Puritan community of the Scarlet Letter, as religious sin as associated with the breaking the law. In the novel we see a hierarchy of sins. It consistently calls into question the notion of sin and what is necessary for redemption. Redemption. Then the first name of this particular novel. Roger Chillingworth's pursuit of revenge is deemed a worse sin than the passion that led Hester Prynne and Arthur Dimmesdale to commit adultery. No character in the book questions the idea that sin should be punished, and all recognize that sin will be punished, if not here on earth by man, then by God after death. Committing sin is regarded as willfully allowing the black man, Satan, to place his mark upon your soul. Then, the Scarlet later follows several strong women. And the chief protagonist of this particular novel, named Hester Prynne, a very, very strong lady, facing all the odds of life bravely. So the Scarlet later follows several strong women in an era when women were expected to be subordinate, very sad, to their male counterparts. Hester Prynne is willing to take on her own shame while protecting the man she loves from his share of the public condemnation. So she was such a woman that she knew all the things about her lover, but she wanted to protect himself from the public condemnation. And the whole burden of the condemnation she was willing to take on her own head. This was one of the greatest qualities of Hester Prynne in this particular novel. So she keeps his secret faithfully for 7 long years. Women, although the weaker sex, some fools say that women are weaker sex, in this heavenly religious society, proved to be incredibly strong in this novel. Then the next theme, one of the major themes, isolation. The novel tells the story of a society that is good, as excluding people as a middle school clique. Hester Prynne lived in an isolation for long years and years, cast out of the Puritan society for having a child out of the wedlock. So without having got married, she was having a child, very beautiful daughter, and the name of the daughter was Pearl. Okay? So her isolation leads her to see her society in a new light and allows her to think outside of the box. Though she was treated very harshly, but she had admitted this. She had got herself accustomed to face such kind of very, very terrible and horrible circumstances in her life. But she loved her daughter a lot. Her isolation leads her to see her society in a new light and allows her to think outside of the box. Ironically, it seems characters who are the most appreciated by and involved in this society seem to be the most conflicted and alone. So she was leading her life in solitude, in an isolated mode. She was forced to live outside of that particular locality where Puritans had their power and had their influence. So the world of the Scarlet later is a religious one that believes in fate and the idea that each person's life follows a specific and set path. Everything is set. Puritans believed in the divine providence, as we have discussed at the very beginning, or the idea that God was a guide who controlled every aspect of life. Character in this novel constantly struggle. There is a great struggle among the characters between letting fate run its course and choosing a path for themselves. Those who are ostracized by the society seem more able to forge a life of their own. Because if somebody is ostracized, if somebody is not enter into that particular uh, loving atmosphere where the children are playing, where the people are talking together, people are laughing together, and one is just watching these happenings in the society, you can just imagine about her or about his mental fluctuations. You can just see, but you cannot get yourself involved in that moments of happiness. Okay? Further, the next one, one of the major themes, memories versus the present. The Hester Prynne's offense against society occurred 7 years earlier, but she remains punished for it. Hester learned to forgive herself for her adultery. She was punished for adultery because without having the wedlock, she had had a child, a daughter. And she was not willing to disclose the name of the father also. But society continues to scorn her for it, all the time being scorned. Indeed, Hester reaches peace with her affair, and in that peace comes to see the town and insufficiently forgiving in its thought and attitudes. Nobody was willing to forgive. So the pearl is enough as a reminder of the wild choices in her past. And as Pearl grows up, Hester continues to live in the present rather than in the past. Now she has taken enjoyment in bringing her up. Okay? Just to finish this particular lecture, I would like again you to remind the necessary things or necessary topics again. I would like to, because I am in the habit of recapitulating the things so that you don't become oblivious of important information. So the Scarlet Letter follows the public shaming and punishment of a young woman. And what was the name of that woman? The Hester Prynne. In the 17th century Boston, that is in Massachusetts, and a Bay colony. So Hester becomes pregnant. Okay? Everyone believes her to be guilty of adultery. She has been separated from her husband for 2 full years. And the tragedy falls on herself. Her husband does not return. I don't know what happened. Later you will come to know. And in between, she has been separated from her husband and for 2 full years, and the baby cannot be his. The magistrate, the local law enforcer, and ministers order her to wear a scarlet letter, A, that is capital A, on the bodies of her dress, so that everyone can know about her adultery. The Scarlet Letter begins when Hester is briefly released from prison so that she can be paraded. Very, very sad. She can be paraded through town, displaying her scarlet A, capital A. While standing on the top of the town scaffold, a public stage, she carries her baby daughter Pearl in her arms. Pearl was born in prison. So the Hester steadfastly refuses to reveal the name of the Pearl's father so that he might be saved from punishment. So this is the pathetic background of one of the most read novels written by Nathaniel Hawthorne entitled The Scarlet Letter. And you know, my dear students, the word scarlet means the reddest one. Reddest color, the color which is having the dark red, and you know, the dark red is the symbol of something very, very dangerous. something very, very dangerous. So I hope you must have enjoyed this particular extract or an overview on this particular novel. The next will be discussed in our next discussion. Okay? Thank you.